If anyone needs translation, we have casks in the entrance. Si quelqu'un a besoin de traduction, il y a des casques à l'entrée. E são todas as línguas que posso falar agora. Ok. Vou ler porque não posso falar à frente das pessoas. Então, sejam mais uma vez bem-vindas e bem-vindos ao cenário único desta edição Maputo Fast Forward. Este ano é a primeira vez que a curadoria é feita por outra pessoa, que é o Rui Trinidade, cofundador e visionário do festival. Então, é com muita emoção que vou vos deixar descobrir o imenso trabalho realizado por os co-curadores Tassiana, Tomé e João Roxo. Um trabalho ambicioso, admirável, e vou deixá-los contar-vos tudo daqui a pouco. Eu disse-lhes para sonhar em grande, dream big, little did I know. Quando alguém me pede para explicar o Maputo Fast Forward em 2 palavras, posso sempre responder inovação e criatividade. Mas na realidade é muito mais do que 2 palavras. Quando sonhadores e fazedores se juntam, trata-se de procurar nuances e lutar contra a polarização das ideias. Abrimos a academia na Fundação Fernando Leite Couto em dezembro e o festival já está a colher os resultados na nossa primeira pesquisa, Benga, Aldeia do Futuro, bem como o resultado da nossa residência artística, os New Kids, com um novo casting e um novo espetáculo, Corpo dos Corpos. Existe também a nossa revista online Radar ao longo do ano e acho que esta edição dará origem a muitos artigos e tópicos futuros. Gostaria de agradecer às muitas pessoas que tornaram possível esta fabulosa edição. Primeiro, a todas e todos os participantes, pensadores, artistas, inovadores, ativistas que renovaram a sua participação ou que se juntam este ano à aventura. Aos nossos patrocínios, e mesmo que eu esteja a citar instituições, os nossos mais sinceros agradecimentos vão para aqueles que as fazem e para aqueles que depositaram a sua confiança em nós. O nosso parceiro de longa data, a Cooperação Suíça, o seu apoio infalível e inestimável. Obrigada, Hilária, Kátia, Lloyd e toda a vossa equipe. Temos o prazer de dar as boas-vindas a um novo parceiro, um parceiro da região, a Fundação de l'Innovation pour la Démocratie, baseada em Johannesburg, Fundação da Inovação pela Democracia, que nos dá a honra não só de nos apoiar, mas também de acolher o seu diretor na abertura do festival, o professor Achille Mbembe, maravilhosamente curioso. Uau! Brilhante. E são 2 vezes a mesma coisa. Incansável. E incansável. Obrigada a ela, a toda a sua equipa, Dr. Jean-Marc, Najiba e todos eles, por este novo começo da nossa história. Ao CCFM, que estava a trabalhar conosco no seu projeto Criação África-Moçambique, junto com os New Narratives, graças ao Jerome, Vincent e ao José Maria e à sua equipe. Ao Banco Mundial, com Laurent, que também está a nos apoiar neste andar dedicado às tecnologias imersivas. Ao Campus EFD, que renova o seu apoio graças ao Charles. Ao governo da Irlanda, com Coetipol e as suas equipas. À cooperação austríaca, obrigada a Lisa, e ao Instituto Commons, obrigada Mariana, que renovaram a sua confiança em nós para esta edição. A Embaixada de França, que nos ajudou a trazer pensadores e investigadores para a conferência. Obrigada a Clémence, Solène e Aurélie, e Rufina. Ao projeto Culture, que financia a residência dos New Kids e que em breve irão descobrir. Temos também muitos parceiros que podem ver no nosso pano lá atrás, no backdrop, a entrada, sem os quais não teríamos conseguido atingir este nível de ambição. Não vou mencioná-lo a todos, para deixar espaço agora para o festival, mas em nome de toda a equipe do MFF, 1000 agradecimentos. como a JFS Tower e a Heloise para nos ter dado esta torre mágica numa zona icônica de Maputo. A Topac e o Jaime para todo o equipamento do palco em plástico, não, das caixas em plástico reciclado e toda a cenografia. Ao Fora de Foco pela existência deste festival, a Spice Malagueta para garantir que os nossos conteúdos cheguem além das fronteiras, a LBS por fazer espaço brilhar, aos muitos voluntários que vieram dar uma mãozinha à Evolution que nos empresta tanto mobiliários, a Visiled por nos iluminar e muito, muito mais. Obrigada, thank you, merci. E claro, quero agradecer uma equipe de sonho, o gênio das nossas produtoras, o talento do nosso cenógrafo, a paciência da nossa administradora, o talento e o empenho de toda a nossa equipa querida. Agora, vou passar a palavra aos nossos curadores. Depois, vamos abrir a primeira conversa do festival, que será seguida para a abertura do nosso bazar, acompanhada de um coquetel, pelo qual gostaria de agradecer Wine Lovers e a Pernod Ricard, que vos devem incentivar a ficar. Tassiana, João? Já é? C'est à vous.
Ora bem, boa tarde a todos e a todas. Antes de mais, um grande obrigado a todos vocês por estarem aqui nesta abertura. Estamos muito, muito entusiasmados, ansiosos também, por outro lado, com tudo isto. Levou algum tempo a conseguirmos chegar aqui e a ter este espaço composto como está. E mais detalhes virão neste curto momento que temos para vos explicar um bocadinho mais sobre a nossa intenção. Depois de pensarmos muito no que falar e no que dizer e como dizer, não é? Porque estas são oportunidades que acho que importa, que vale a pena aproveitar, não é? Vamos tentar ser sucintos, mas não prometo nada. Depois de muito pensarmos nisto, não é? No tema e em como introduzi-lo, partimos desta ideia de um fast forward, né? E isto, neste momento, esta ideia do fast forward é algo que nos diz respeito, pois parece que está tudo em fast forward. Parece que temos uma queda muito grande para otimização, para uma espécie de corrida sem meta. Continuamente existe esta tendência à produção, à otimização de tudo o que nós fazemos, do nosso dia a dia. Parece que queremos que o dia tenha mais que 24 horas. É esse o nosso status quo e por isso, com este festival de Maputo Fast Forward deste ano, pretendemos ou temos a intenção de propor uma pausa. Uma pausa para respirar, uma pausa para escutar, principalmente, e uma pausa para refletir. Como poderíamos parar o tempo? Como poderíamos repensar este conceito de tempo? Este festival, tivemos o prazer e privilégio de ser convidados para desenvolver a programação, para trazer todos os convidados que aqui estão mais uma vez aproveitar esta oportunidade para criar este espaço de interação, este espaço de hiperligações. Não há como falar do festival sem falar de Rui Trindade. Uma pessoa especial, querida, que infelizmente não está mais connosco, mas que continua connosco e que nos rodeia todos os dias, a mim pessoalmente e a todos os que fazem parte desta bela equipa. Tem sido um percurso bastante conturbado, bastante complexo, com perdas, com distanciamentos. Passámos por um período de Covid que chegou no momento em que o festival estava finalmente a ganhar asas, e quase que se teve que voltar à estaca, entre aspas, zero. E com a perda do Rui, mais uma vez, aconteceu isto. E de forma muito bonita tenho visto este festival novamente a ganhar vida, e tenho muito orgulho e prazer de fazer parte deste percurso, assim como sei que Tassiana também. Um, Digo sempre que o Maputo Fast Forward é um espaço único, um espaço integrado, multidisciplinar, que abarca vários vetores: a arte, a tecnologia, a inovação, o pensamento crítico, que, a meu ver, é definidor do conceito, não do conceito, mas da nossa cultura. É esse apanhado de influências, esse apanhado de estímulos e de recursos que compõem aquilo que nós definimos como cultura. De forma despretensiosa, a cultura não é algo extraordinário. A cultura não é apenas entretenimento. É algo comum ao nível de todos nós e preferencialmente de acesso para todos. E este espaço pretende justamente isso: ser um espaço de produção, de conhecimento, de disseminação, de intercâmbio, onde vários pensadores e várias audiências podem colaborar, engajar e principalmente fazer propostas. A nossa proposta com este festival é justamente um retorno à hipótese, sem preconceitos. Tenho pessoalmente uma ligação muito forte à comunidade criativa nacional, e sinto que sou inspirado diariamente e tenho o privilégio de engajar com várias pessoas que me constroem todos os dias de forma especial. E acompanho também as dificuldades, os obstáculos e o percurso conturbado que é fazer arte ou procurar fazer cultura. E lembro-me sempre de um conceito de um amigo meu sul-africano chamado Chad Cordeiro, que a meu convite escreveu um artigo que para mim, que me acompanha até hoje, chamado Império Desconhecido. E ele fazia uma analogia da comunidade criativa a um corpo micilioso que... Desculpem se o meu português falhou aqui um segundo. Que é um corpo subterrâneo que liga o nosso planeta e que está presente, mas que não é necessariamente visível, mas que existe e está lá. E é através de uma interajuda destes corpos subterrâneos que eles conseguem sobreviver. E isso é muito bonito de se ver. Com isto, passo a palavra à minha colega de vida. Obrigado.
Obrigada, João. Talvez vou só puxar algumas ideias do João para recordar que este é o 8º festival do Maputo Fast Forward. portanto já é um longo percurso. E este festival é um festival de ideias, é um festival de partilha de conhecimento, de arte, criatividade e inovação. É um festival que pretende refletir problemáticas sociais, económicas, políticas, mas trazendo sempre a arte e a tecnologia como vetores essenciais para estas reflexões. Reunindo pensadores, criativos, artistas, ativistas, fazedores, como dizia Elodie, trazendo vozes diversas, com linguagens distintas de diferentes disciplinas e áreas de atuação, com a intenção de ligar Maputo, Moçambique, África, ao mundo e vice-versa. É também um festival que, de alguma forma, tem a intenção de quebrar muros da academia e recriar outros espaços diferentes para co-criar conhecimentos e troca de ideias. É um festival que compreende que, para transformar o mundo, precisamos também transformar primeiro as nossas ideias. Este ano, temos conosco, presencialmente e virtualmente, mais de 50 artistas, oradores, moderadores de cerca de 20 países diferentes, contribuindo com as suas vozes para pensar o nosso futuro. Nos propusemos a criar um programa extremamente ambicioso, de 25 atividades compactadas ao longo de aproximadamente uma semana, que envolvem uma conferência com um ciclo de 5 conversas, 8 exibições, performances e shows, 13 rodas de saberes, que são espaços para troca de conhecimento em áreas temáticas como ecologia, arquitetura, inovação socioambiental, conservação, reciclagem, democracia substantiva, entre outras, incluindo ainda a masterclass e um bazar que vocês terão a oportunidade de visitar. Tudo isto em 3 andares deste edifício, neste lugar específico. E queria fazer uma nota sobre o lugar e sobre a escolha também, porque para pensar os futuros que desejamos em Maputo, viemos parar aqui à Rua de Bagamoio, e este é um lugar simbólico de várias formas. Está localizado entre a Estação dos Caminhos de Ferro e o Porto da cidade. É uma rua marcada historicamente pelo cruzamento e trânsito de pessoas de diversos cantos da África e do mundo. Foi um palco de uma variedade de espaços de entretenimento da cidade, onde se encontravam marinheiros, viajantes, trabalhadoras de sexo, passando por metamorfoses diversas que foram evidenciando a transformação histórica da cidade e do país desde o período colonial, à Guerra de Libertação, às diferentes fases do período pós-independência, também com o nascimento da Escola Nacional de Dança e do Arquivo do Património Cultural e Material, que estão nesta rua. Portanto, é uma rua com muito significado para este festival. O tema deste ano, Corpos Hiperligados, Propostas para o Pós-Anthropoceno, que é um título que parece à partida bastante complicado, mas que queremos tentar desmistificar um pouco e explicar o que é que isto significa e qual é a intenção. Nós escolhemos este tema com base na compreensão de que não é possível pensarmos o futuro e as múltiplas crises que atravessam a contemporaneidade, a crise económica, social, política e também a crise de afeto que vivemos em escala planetária, sem abordar com atenção a crise ecológica que nos atravessa profundamente, colocando em causa a habitabilidade do planeta e a vida. O conceito de antropoceno, defendido por diversos cientistas, chama a atenção à nossa responsabilidade humana, que com este modelo de desenvolvimento que criamos em curto tempo na história da Terra, já impactamos profundamente e destrutivamente, deixando um registro geológico e alterando processos biofísicos que sustentam a vida. Pensar propostas para o pós-antropoceno é convidar a refletir sobre como podemos transformar a relação que temos com a Terra e com os outros seres para gerar futuros que sejam ecologicamente habitáveis, economicamente justos e socialmente inclusivos. Sabemos que é ambicioso, é uma questão ampla e geral, mas que é urgente e necessária. E como João dizia, este é um momento para pausar e refletir. E por isso o tema convida também a compreender o planeta como um organismo vivo, como um corpo. E a compreender também que a nossa vida enquanto seres humanos só é possível se recordarmos a nossa interdependência com todos os seres que coabitam este planeta. A analogia ou ideia de corpos hiperligados também quer trazer esta referência ao conceito informático ou do web, de hyperlink, não é? Ou hiperlink, que é também um modelo que permite a conexão, a estrutura conectada da internet como nós conhecemos. Mas talvez pensar até que ponto a tecnologia e este momento, ou esta era digital, também nos tem desconectado da Terra. As perguntas que colocamos são: como é que podemos, então, no auge desta crise ecológica, parar e escutar o que a Terra nos quer dizer? Como é que podemos, num espaço de profunda polarização social e política, crise democrática e conflitos tão violentos, agudizando em diversas partes do planeta, parar e ouvirmos uns aos outros? Como é que podemos escutar os nossos próprios corpos, muitas vezes exaustos, adoecidos ou colados às telas, em meio da hiperdigitalização e de um contexto de alta desigualdade? E se o futuro é ancestral, como diz o líder indígena Ailton Krenak, do Brasil, como podemos ouvir o que as nossas histórias e também o que o nosso passado e ancestralidades nos têm para ensinar sobre o futuro? E esta é a nossa proposta ambiciosa, que só foi possível ser materializada porque contou com uma força motriz, que é a Elodie Finel, que estava aqui no palco, coordenadora do Maputo Fast Forward, e que nos convidou para conceber e conceptualizar esta edição. E nos disse: sonhem, sonhem alto. E nós sonhamos. E sabemos que este sonho acabou puxando muitos limites. A materialização deste festival, que traz tudo isto que partilhava de forma inteiramente gratuita para qualquer um e uma que quiser aqui participar, e que tenta colocar vozes cada vez mais diversas e chegar a uma audiência cada vez mais diversa, só foi possível porque a Elodie nos incentivou a sonhar e manteve sempre um otimismo inabalável diante das inúmeras dificuldades, de pouquíssimos recursos financeiros e materiais. E com uma equipa pequena, mas super gigante de qualidade, transformou o pouco em muito. Não podemos não partilhar com todas e todos que aqui estão que esta equipa pequena e gigante foi de uma dedicação impressionante, acompanhada de muito sacrifício, de cansaço, de obstáculos que pareciam intransponíveis, mas também acompanhada de uma resiliência, animação e um compromisso com o coração, um compromisso de coração com o festival. Esta equipa trabalhou, como João dizia, como uma verdadeira rede miciliosa. Uma rede de entreajuda. Por isso, nós gostaríamos de chamar para o palco Elodie, Évaro Abreu, Yara Miel, Eva Cormina,
Sendo
Andressa.
que a maior parte da equipa provavelmente está a trabalhar
Está a
nos espaços
trabalhar.
positivos.
Ok. A Andressa, vou dizer os nomes a mesma porque acho que têm que ser mencionados. Andrea Gossman, Júlia Sarmento, Eduardo Kiv, Sásia Souza e Langa. Pedimos uma enorme salva de palmas para esta equipa. Estas pessoas fugiram-nos do palco, porque eu estou a ver as pessoas aqui. E terminamos assim, eu acho que a nossa introdução, propondo agora um momento que para nós é o mais especial e é o que realmente acho que estamos todos ansiosos. Então, gostaria de introduzir aqui ao palco o painel que dará início, a abertura do festival e também do ciclo de conversas, que conta com 3 pessoas magníficas, que são uma referência para o continente africano e que são uma referência do continente para o mundo. É um enorme privilégio contarmos convosco aqui. Obrigada desde já. Sim. Então, gostaria de chamar ao palco, desde já, a nossa moderadora, Isabela Casimiro. Uma salva de palmas, por favor. E os nossos oradores, o professor Achille Mbembe e a doutora Patricia McFadden, uma enorme salva de palmas. Gostaríamos também de partilhar que, infelizmente, um dos outros oradores que iria se juntar a este painel em função de um atraso do voo, acabou não conseguindo chegar a tempo para participar da conversa, mas chega esta noite e estará amanhã numa sessão exclusiva, que é o professor Rolando Vasquez, que vinha da Holanda. Então, com isto, nós vamos dar início à conversa intitulada Como Escutar o Planeta? Propostas para o Pós-Antropoceno. Obrigada.
Obrigado a todos. E todos. Have a blast. The stage is yours. Sorry, não sei, fala com a senhora.
Oh, they're quite low, these seats. Did you notice? I just need to get connected because otherwise I can't read my paper.
Okay, so you want me to speak in English for the introduction?
No, speak however you want, my darling.
Okay,
It's okay.
perhaps when I
Thank
talk
you,
about
baby.
you.
Thank you, thank
Hello?
you, thank you,
Ok.
thank you.
Ora, muito boa tarde a todas e a todos. Como foi dito pela Tassiana e pelo João, nós hoje vamos ter, e em todos os dias nós vamos ter dias maravilhosos. Hoje temos o prazer de ter entre nós duas... Não se ouve? Ai, uma pessoa tem que aproximar destes aparelhos e assim já me ouvem. Como eu não gosto destes aparelhos. Então, nós temos o prazer de ter entre nós duas pessoas do continente africano que são bastante conhecidas. Eu vou ler as suas biografias porque eu acho que é importante. Não vou inventar, mas eu gostaria de dizer que a pessoa que eu conheci primeiro foi a Patricia McFadden. A Patricia McFadden é da Suazilândia. Or can I say eSwatini? It is Swaziland or eSwatini? You don't care. Ok. But quando eu a conheci era Suazilândia, não é? Então, conhecia quando foi criado aquele projeto Women and Law in Southern Africa. Estávamos no Zimbábue e eu fiquei surpresa e encantada pelas questões que ela colocava naquele encontro que deixou muitas mulheres assustadas. E aprendi muito com ela, com as questões que ela levantava, com o seu desafiar das situações à sua volta. E desde 88 ou 90 que nós nos encontramos Não tanto como gostaríamos, mas nos encontramos regularmente. Então, a Patricia McFadden é uma ecofeminista radical, que aspira a uma vida de liberdade e alegria. Ela vive numa antiga montanha, no leste de eSwatini, quando se vai por Goba, é ali assim, onde cultiva seus alimentos e ervas veganas orgânicas. Hoje, enquanto nós pedíamos outra comida, ela comia a sua própria comida da sua machamba. Mas ela vai falar sobre isso. Ela busca uma relação equilibrada e respeitosa com a natureza, que abrange todos os seres sencientes, enquanto procura novos impulsos e percepções feministas a partir do seu estilo de vida ecofeminista. Algumas das suas publicações mais recentes são As Liberdades das Mulheres são o Pulsar do Futuro da África, o Imperativo Sankariano, em A Certain Amount of Madness, The Life, Politics and Legacies of Thomas Sankara, uma conversa feminista situando nossas ideias e energias radicais no contexto africano contemporâneo. Com Patrícia Tuacima, saiu de um dos encontros Feminist Lab, laboratório feminista organizado pela Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, Fundação. Outros criticando discursos convencionais sobre meninas e identidades femininas de género em África, contemporaneidade, suficiência em uma vida feminista radical africana, Feminism, Race, Transnationalism, saiu nesse livro. O nexo entre neoliberalismo e precariedade, lutas por sociedades alternativas. Moçambique, a subjetividade é a expressão crítica... Não, desculpem, a subjetividade é a expressão crítica fundamental da contemporaneidade feminista. A sua apresentação vai ser sobre Aprendendo a Amar a Terra, o ecofeminismo é o caminho de volta à natureza através do amor próprio. Não sei se vou apresentar já o professor Achille Mbembe ou se vou apresentar cada um de sua vez. O que é que vos parece? Posso apresentar os dois e depois dar a palavra? Para lhes dar todo o tempo do mundo. Desculpem. Para lhes dar todo o tempo do mundo. May I present you? Ok. Então, depois temos alguém que também é conhecido. Manter uma mesa é complicado, sabem? A gente anda aqui com os papéis atrás. Alguém que é conhecido, é dos Camarões. É um dos intelectuais, Achille Mbembe, é um dos intelectuais mais influentes e amplamente citados da atualidade. É professor de História e Política no Wits Institute for Social and Economic Research, WISER, da Universidade de Witwatersrand, em Joanesburgo. É diretor da Fundação de Inovação para a Democracia, doutor em História pela Sorbonne, em Paris, em 1989, e possui um diploma d'études approfondies, diploma de estudos aprofundados, em Ciência Política no Instituto d'Études Politiques. Foi professor assistente de História na Universidade de Colômbia, em Nova York, investigador sénior no Brookings Institute em Washington, D.C., professor associado de História na Universidade da Pensilvânia e secretário executivo do Conselho para o Desenvolvimento da Pesquisa em Ciências Sociais em África, Codésia, em Dakar. Também foi professor visitante na Universidade da Califórnia, na Universidade de Yale, na Universidade da Califórnia, em Irvine, na Universidade Duke e na Universidade de Harvard. É detentor de um doutorado. Eu vou deixar os doutores para vocês, os doutoramentos para vocês lerem. Creio que é importante falarmos de que é cofundador dos ateliês de la pensée de Dakar. Ateliês do pensamento de Dakar. É uma figura importante na emergência de uma nova onda de teoria crítica. Tem uma obra extensa sobre política e filosofia contemporâneas, incluindo On the Post-Coloniality, Critique of Black Reason, que também temos lido nas nossas academias, Necropolitics, outra obra que temos lido, e Out of the Dark Night, Essays on Decolonization. E temos um outro livro que está muito relacionado com o que vamos conversar aqui, A Comunidade Terrestre, Reflexões sobre a Última Utopia de 2022, entre outros. Então, nós temos aqui, vamos pensar como escutar a Terra, como nos relacionarmos com a Terra, que sempre tínhamos estado, mas deixámos de nos relacionar. Isso já foi falado aqui no princípio, por quem abriu este festival. O que é que nós devemos fazer para nos escutarmos, para nos ouvirmos, para nos relacionarmos, para pararmos e para respirarmos? Antes de eu continuar a falar mais, porque vocês sabem que eu gosto de falar, eu vou dar a palavra à Patrícia, ladies first, e depois ao Achille. Can it be? Don't worry. Ok, então, Patrícia, please, it is your time.
Oh my goodness me, this is so lovely. Thank you so much, Isabel. No, I've got one here.
Ok.
Thank you.
Strange.
So, you know, well, we're not going to go there. It's such a pleasure, always so generous and so loving, Isabel. Thank you so much. I'm not the only one who knows the generosity of Isabel and how precious she is for us as radical women who are struggling to try to transform our worlds. Thank you also for allowing me to be in this community with you today. And it's also lovely to see Achille after many, many years. So you know why I'm going to be smiling throughout. So it's a great pleasure for me. I think we have about 30 minutes each. So I'm timing myself now because like her, I like to talk, and then women must talk. We must talk. We've been silent for too long. We must talk. And I will be talking. So, and I thank you for giving me this opportunity to be with you. So today I'm going to try, I was listening to the introduction and I was thinking, oh, wow, Maputo Fast Forward or Movement Fast Forward, and we can add many meanings to this acronym that has been used in terms of this conference. And I was thinking, okay, that's where and when I enter. I will enter by situating myself through a reminder to us all that as we fast forward, we have to know where we come from and where we are. Because I think it's very important for us to understand the significance of the past in particular ways, not necessarily through the voices or the prisms of the nationalists, but really through the learned experience and the lessons that we take from the past so that we can craft alternative societies that are based on love for each other, but also respect and all the difficult challenges that we face as human beings. And this, for the first time at least, I'm glad to say it's not only about the Africans, it's about all of us. So I'm going to enter, where do I re-enter? I'm going to enter by sharing with you my journey in exploring a life of sufficiency and joy. I begin at the place where I returned home, quote unquote, 20 years ago. having been away for so many years, I returned to a place I had fondly carried with me on the many journeys I took across the planet, pursuing the dream of freedom and political liberation that I'm still wrestling from the clutches of patriarchy, and particularly from white colonial racist hegemony in all its manifestations. We know that this region has been shaped and marked in very deep and very problematic ways by settler colonialism, which is persistent. And so when I returned home 20 years ago, I was exhausted and disenchanted. I was nursing a massive emotional wound caused by the unexpected and untimely death of my son, Mandla Bantu, who had been my best friend and closest ally. He had loved me unconditionally, and he taught me so much in the 18 years when we were together, and who had challenged me fearlessly on every aspect of my radical life. I don't often get that, the fearless challenge, you know? And I loved it. It grew me in very special and intimate ways. So besides losing him, additionally, the political landscape of Southern Africa was changing 20 years ago at a fast and unexpected, yet predictable pace. For those of us who had not assumed that independence equated freedom, having observed the post-colonial experiences of the rest of the continent from very close quarters, we had lived in many of the countries of the continent. The so-called transition by countries like South Africa to bourgeois democracy was really just a replay of the same old colonial manipulative playbook. Same thing, different day. But I had been forced by these essentially anti-radical circumstances to return to one of the most repressive and intolerant dictatorships on the continent, and I had no choice. Zimbabwe had already tried to deport me for allegedly being a homosexual, because I wrote about sexuality, and I also wrote about women who love other women, and how beautiful it is, and how much more natural it is than heteronormativity. And of course, adding to that was that the women's movement, which I had considered a home away from home, had betrayed me by remaining firmly clasped in the embrace of reactionary nationalism. So I was considered too radical, and I was considered a threat to the African culture. So there I was, hanging by the skin of my teeth, and I had to return to a place that could arrest me and incarcerate me on any pretext, and which still can, but which could not deport me because of birthright. Even though that too had been earlier contested for people like me, people of so-called mixed race. So I came home to one of the oldest mountains on the earth, and I prepared myself to begin, or rather to continue, the next phase of my life. I had been steeled in the furnace of life, had survived the many vagaries of living away from country without the assurances that had helped my comrades make it through exile. Nonetheless, I had not fully anticipated just how vicious the heteropatriarchy of the so-called family is. The backlash was swift and fierce, and it continues to date. And the battle to survive it by reminding myself every single day that I love being radical and feminist. This has been both exhilarating and deeply exhausting. In hindsight, I should have anticipated some of the backlash and hatred that I've encountered since my return. mainly from family and neighbors who harbor a deep-seated resentment that I came back a different person, yet still entitled, to live on the mountain in my own chosen ways. I'm autonomous, vegan, financially independent, and fiercely intolerant of monarchism and of the humiliation and fear that monarchism deploys against a subjective people. And I make my voice heard all the time. So I should also have been more alert to the reality of returning to a society that is basically locked into the 14th century, a feudal patriarchy that is so backward and unyielding. Oh, it's so difficult to work from your lap, you know. Actually, I like the idea of being modern, but sometimes a table or somewhere to put the equipment is really useful. And this is really making it quite difficult for me to maneuver. And you know what? The cursor always disappears. Has anybody actually had that experience where your cursor just disappears? It takes a walk and you try to look for it, you can't find it. And then suddenly it appears on a corner of the screen, or somebody is actually, now you see now. And I don't know where to find it. Okay, so, okay, let's see. Okay, here we go. So I found it. So I should have been more alert to the reality of returning to a society that is basically locked into the 14th century, a feudal patriarchy that is so backward and unyielding to any gestures towards social, political, and cultural change, that being radical and worldly in the ways I have become was bound to have immediate and profound repercussions on me. The fact is that I was never going to give up my feminist identity and the love of self that has nurtured my very being for the past half century. So I continue to resist and to grow in spite of the toxicity and repression that surrounds me, knowing that radical women will have to stand up and challenge heteropatriarchy in its lair, that the heteropatriarchal family is the lair, the hiding place of patriarchy, which is also its last refuge. That's where the remaining major struggles for women are located. The struggles for justice, truth, integrity, autonomy, freedom. Oh my goodness me. Freedom for all living beings will be unending as long as the patriarchy rules the earth. My next subheading is embracing my subjectivities and learning from the earth. In this offering, I have chosen to speak from the personal subjective self because I know that becoming ecofeminist for me is essentially about returning to the self as body and as living being through a re-embrace of nature as the force and the source of life and joys. As a child in the 1950s, I roamed the mountain with other children, eating wild fruit, climbing trees with careless abandon, without fear of snakes or other so-called wild creatures. I had no fear of nature. Actually, we need a term that will adequately describe the fear of nature that has become so normative to most humans. Through my childhood memories, I am now retrieving the sensibilities that were imprinted on my body, my feet, my skin, and my spirit through close encounters with the felt and all those who live in it and on it. These imprints have remained deeply etched inside my being, providing me with a sense of self-love and courage that has served me in good stead as I traversed the many landscapes and struggles of my life this far. I have often wondered where I had gotten the daring to say no to any form of repression and humiliation. And returning to the mountain has begun to answer some of those questions for me. The mountain has changed over time, as all places and habitations do, largely as a consequence of the destructiveness of humans. Most of the beings who lived there long before we evolved have been slaughtered and decimated to satisfy a base human desire for their flesh. It's grotesquely bizarre and even nauseating to even contemplate the senselessness of what is casually taken for granted and even legitimized as natural through a supremacist logic that is, humans have the right to eat everything on the planet. Of course, they also use the religious argument for that, which has resulted in the whole-scale extermination of countless species of amazing beings who are entitled to be here too, as part and parcel of the pulse and the rhythm of life on the planet. But I too was addicted to the flesh of other animals before I acquired an ecological feminist consciousness 35 years ago, after which my body and spirit have become uncompromisingly repelled by the very thought of the breath and the blood of another being in my mouth. I want to say it again. I too was addicted to the flesh of other animals before I acquired an ecological feminist consciousness 35 years ago, after which my body and my spirit have become uncompromisingly repelled by the very thought of the breath and the blood of another being in my mouth. And now I know in the depths of my essential self, I know that this addiction is the curse that humans have cast upon themselves and by which they are doomed. It speaks most profoundly, this addiction, it speaks most profoundly to the separation of humans as animals from the rest of life. Beyond the violence and wanton destruction of the material fabric of the earth, the mining, the warring, and the pillaging of the forests, of the plants and the oceans, and more recently of the stratosphere. It is the very consumption of animals, of animal life, which is the ultimate separator of humans from nature. So what have I done about this consciousness, acquiring this consciousness and living it and translating it into my feminist life and into my writing and theorizing? I now will talk about sufficiency is more than enough for the body and the heart. When we embrace sufficiency, we have more than we need for our bodies and for our beautiful hearts. I remember the feeling of freedom that would rush through through me every afternoon as I hastened to change out of my school clothing, my school uniform, and into an often raggedy dress, because of course, nice clothing were worn only when we went to town or when we went to church. This was about 73 years ago when I was born. So I remember that feeling, and I remember the sensation of release as we ran from tree to tree across the field, checking to see if the fruits were ripe enough to be eaten with childish relish and delight. These days, as my daily life of living as an organic cultivator have coalesced around a kind of routine, I cannot wait to step into my work boots and roam across the field, always across the fields that always offer me a small bounty of nature's generosity and abundance. I always bring something back into my kitchen, no matter the season or the state of the weather. Slowly, I'm appreciating the generosity and resilience of indigenous fruit trees, for example, and the harmonious ambience that these indigenous trees create among the exotic trees that I live with on the mountain. Each season, I make delicious jams and juices from marula, from kai apples, and other berries. Oh, so you didn't put on the computer because, yeah, there's no power. It's alerting me that my battery is collapsing. So I'm going to lose. Yes, I do. But meanwhile, please solve the electrical problem because that's the only thing I need. I have everything else. I'm enough. But this electricity issue, I have no control over it. It's making me feel nervous. Because I have some more gems that I would like to share with you. So please secure the electricity. I know we have problems with electricity as Africans. Look at South Africa. They're in big trouble. Yeah, they didn't anticipate enough. Okay, so please, I'll just assume that you're going to solve this problem, and I will continue to give myself pleasure. And I hope that I'm giving you pleasure too, because that is why we come on these long journeys, to come together to pleasure each other, and also to learn, of course, and to find out who we are, and to meet each other and to feel joy. So I was saying that it is the indigenous fruit. Yeah, I have. It's you see, it's on. Okay, it's on. Thank you, darling. So I like to use terms of endearment for young women because it makes me feel so pleased and so happy. You know, I always say darling and honey. It's also the privilege of aging, you know. You can actually do that. You take license and then you give yourself the pleasure of feeling affection for younger people. It's such a great a privilege which comes with aging. I love aging, even though I'm fighting a new battle against ageism. It's a really nasty, vicious expression of sexism. But anyway, that's for another time. For now, I'm just sharing with you that I make delicious jams and juices from many of the indigenous fruit, which give me a bounty. And I'm also learning to eat in season and then to shed the bad habits of supermarket consumerism. So I only eat in season and I eat from my fields. And I'm competing with the monkeys mainly. They're a headache, but they usually leave something on a bunch of bananas. They leave one or two after they bite and, you know, just destroy the whole bunch. Those of you who have lived close to the monkeys, you'll know what a headache they are. but then they are neighbors. You know, we all have neighbors. Some are okay, others are just interfering with our lives. And monkeys interfere with my life, but I have to accept that they're my neighbors. Okay, so realizing that the trees, this is a very important lesson I've learned, because becoming vegan and growing my own food is really a lesson of life for me at this point in my life. Now, realizing that the trees fruit for themselves, not for humans, they fruit for themselves. This has clarified for me the relationships, for example, that birds have with the forest. They eat only as much as they need at a time. But also, this has enabled me to unlearn the egregious habit of seeing a fruiting tree as a form of property from which to demand and make as many demands as possible. Understanding that I am only a beneficiary of nature's bounty is teaching me an important meaning of humility and kindness. My use of the notion of sufficiency is thus both anti-capitalist, and it's also an expression of a deeper embrace of generosity and sharing. Each season, when the many avocado trees that grow on the mountain, I planted them, but you know, they would have grown anyway, probably on their own. When they gift me with a bounty of fruit, I load up my truck with them to share with my friends in our little town called Stegi. But I always get the same question. Why are you not selling? This question continuously reminds me of how the market has entered our consciousness and our souls. That people have forgotten how to receive a gift. They think about life as being bought. Everything must be bought and sold. So the hegemony of the market is unimaginably pervasive. I'm still okay. As I search for and embrace new expressions of feminist consciousness and activism, especially within the constrained context of my present location in a dictatorship, offering friends the gifts of the trees, offering friends trees as gifts. And I try to give them as many as possible, is one of the ways I hope to stimulate an interest and a greater awareness of the existential crisis that we face. The trees seem to have sensed the depth of the crisis more intimately than humans. And they are seeding themselves with amazing abundance. Guavas, mangoes, peaches, and pawpaws in particular proliferate across my fields and in the compost heaps. I am hopeful that these little activist gestures will contribute to the reversal of the Anthropocene. As I forage for the small, tart indigenous tomatoes that seed themselves, they choose where they want. They are very, very autonomous. They appear wherever they want in my garden, and I just leave them. And of course, I wait, I nurture them, and then they give me little red fruits, you know, and they don't get affected by the fungi and the sicknesses that are ravaging all the forest areas of the world. So these little tomatoes, they seed themselves haphazardly across the field. And I'm constantly in awe at their resilience and their tenacity for life. And I take that home with me. In a drought year such as this, for example, surviving in order to thrive in times of plenty is the true imperative of life outside of capitalist consumerism and access. Living with and in drought is an essential part of life on the mountain and generally across Southern Africa. And learning how to survive with it as it has become more severe and more fierce is both a continuing ancient challenge. We've always had to be creative in the face of drought, but it's also a learning opportunity to know the earth in more intimate ways. Since becoming vegan 3 decades ago, and learning how to navigate the challenges presented by an institutionalized food system that until recently treated veganism as a peculiarity, to put it kindly, I have not only rediscovered my creative instincts. For example, instead of raging against the hostile and inflexible catering institutions like restaurants and hotels, I simply carry my food. I still get silly questions from people and strange looks from the restaurant staff, but I don't have to suffer the indignity of being pointed to the salad bar, which is what happened to me for many years. And I was trapped in my rage that because I was so angry, the more I understood how inflexible and how institutionalized and corporatized food had become, I would just go mad, until I had to say, no, let me be creative. Let me find ways of feeding Patricia and making sure she eats well in the midst of all the stuff that was going on around me. Excuse me. You know, talking is a lot of work. It's very hard work.
And we began talking during the meal.
And I've been talking all my life. I love it. I think I also talk in my sleep. Really? I love it. And I've been a teacher for ever since I was a little girl. So, you know, they're talking. Some of us come from the universe onto the planet so that we can talk. However, it's in the intimate relationship with herbs that has been most insightful and life-changing throughout my vegan journey. It began as an exploration of the alternative to allopathic medicine, a search for a new way of supporting and healing my body as it has aged and it has faced the new vulnerabilities of aging. I have continued to learn and grow from the wisdom of women healers who teach more knowledge and they teach a knowledge and practice of feminism, which is about self-loving. And that I also share this knowledge with women who are searching for alternative relationships with their bodies and with their spirituality, beyond the conventional and normative constructions of ourselves as helpless in the face of the medical industry. I continue to be amazed and humbled by the quiet power of the most innocuous herbs, the ones that don't show off, that don't make a lot of noise. Thyme, sage, rosemary, feverfew, comfrey, and the most humble mint, among many companions, both exotic and indigenous. And I'm amazed at how unconditionally generous they are in my life. I rarely go to the hospital except in cases of emergency, because I know that the hospitals are places of hatred and misogyny for women, it's a place of hatred, where older women in particular often encounter the contempt and the ridicule that underlies a vicious, ageist sexism and misogyny, which is couched in culturalized terms of supposed respect. During COVID, I locked my gate and I battled with the virus alone, supported and loved by my herbal companions. And I made it through without medical intervention. This is the power of the legacy of ecological feminist knowledge and healing. It is the retrieval of memories and lessons learned every day in the field, which are then folded back into my feminist theorizing and practice as expressions of contemporarity, a notion that I'm developing in my work now, my new work, which is about bringing the feminist future into the present. Being contemporary is about bringing the future, the feminist future, into our lives now. And this idea energizes and emboldens my ecofeminist practice and activism. I know I have maybe 5 minutes left. Foundational feminist notions of integrity, autonomy, dignity, and freedom constantly occupy my thinking as I realize that their power and their meaning derives from the wisdom that female humans have acquired over many millennia through their intimate relationships with the earth, all living beings, and nature as a whole. I'm aware of the many debates and discourses that ecological feminists continue to engage with amongst themselves, and now increasingly with theorists and activists across the environmental spectrum. I'm aware of this. The very present and undeniable reality of human destructiveness upon the earth and its multiple inhabitants has to be reckoned with as an unavoidable imperative, which speaks profoundly to this and many gatherings across the world. I come from the ecological traditions of the late 20th century. I come from the ecological feminist traditions of the late 20th century. The courageous wisdom and insights of Wangari Maathai, Sylvia Federici, Maria Mies, Vandana Shiva. You should be giving them a hand. You should be giving them a clap. These are warriors, warriors. These are the most beautiful, among the most beautiful humans who have ever lived on the planet. Wangari Maathai, Sylvia Federici, Maria Mies, Vandana Shiva, Genevieve Austin, Alice Walker, Isabella Allende, Arundhati Roy, Yvette Abrams, Bella Abzug, and I could spend the whole day listing them. They are warriors for the future, for justice. And many, many more who have nurtured the legacies and the visions of their foremothers and have insisted that patriarchal ecocide and the impunitive destruction of the earth must be resisted and overthrown. As death and destruction continue to rain down on the lives of working people across the face of the earth, ravaging their bodies and their lives, and our common natural legacies, ecological feminism in particular has insisted and persisted on reminding and teaching us about the centrality of love and joy for all of us. Thank you. Did very well with my time.
You did very well. You did very well for someone that talks a lot. It was fantastic, fantastic. Ok, yes. Eu não vou sumarizar, porque não tenho competência nenhuma para sumarizar o que a Patrícia disse, apenas referir a alguns aspectos. Nós podemos ver que estamos na presença de alguém, de uma lutadora, de uma resistente, de uma desafiadora, de uma feminista que já vem de há muito tempo, de uma longa tradição de mulheres, se calhar não se chamavam feministas, mas eram feministas, e que tinham uma ligação particular com a terra, não se aproveitando dela, não a explorando, mas vivendo em comunhão com a terra. A Patrícia teve a oportunidade aqui de falar de algumas dessas pessoas. Nós conhecemos bem a Wangari Maathai, a mulher do movimento verde, que desafiou também o Quênia e o mundo, e por isso esteve com residência fixa em alguns momentos da sua vida. Porque as pessoas que desafiam o status quo, este mundo capitalista, patriarcal, são pessoas que têm que ser resistentes e que normalmente pagam caro essa sua resistência. Ela participou na luta armada, podemos dizer na luta nacionalista a nível da África Austral, e desencantou-se também, não é? Com toda uma série de coisas que foram acontecendo depois. E como muitas e muitas de nós nos desencantamos, mas nos encantamos depois através desta experiência que ela tem e que partilhou conosco. Muito obrigada. Asante sana Kanimambo. Eu não sei como é que se diz em eSwatini, é uma palavra muito complicada, não é? Mas, ok. Muito obrigada, Patrícia. Nós agora vamos pedir ao Achille Mbembe para partilhar conosco também as suas reflexões, que alguns de nós conhecem também, mas nós gostaríamos muito que partilhasse conosco. Peço-vos que retenham todas as questões que têm para podermos debater, porque nós estamos aqui também para dialogar, para respirar em conjunto, para refletir e, quem sabe, também para encontrarmos alguns caminhos, nós próprios e em conjunto. Please.
Thank you very much, Isabella. I'm very happy to be here. As Patricia knows, I can spend a lot of time just listening to her. I really love listening to her. I'm very happy because the last time we met, it was, I don't even know, I think it was more than 15 years ago. And Patricia was still living then in Zimbabwe. And as she told us, a number of things happened then, and they tried to deport her, which means to make her a stranger in our own continent, which for me is probably the biggest scandal any person of African descent can go through, which to a large extent tells us about the huge amount of work we still have to do to open this continent to itself. A lot of the time in our history, whenever we have had to move, we have moved in shackles. And we all dream of a time when we'll be able to move freely and to settle wherever we want in this huge continent of ours. So listening to Patricia, I think it brings us to some of these fundamental issues which are part of what today in this place it means to listen to the planet. I was also deeply moved by the kind of embodied knowledge and situated knowledge she has been sharing with us. In fact, listening to Patricia, I could hear the voice of my own daughter, who is 18 years old, and who 2 days ago was teaching me about what it means teaching me literally. She sat me down and she taught me about what it means to eat seasonally. I can't remember the exact term. Yes. So she told me, okay, you know what? Instead of you going to Woolworths every 2-3 days, you should learn how to eat seasonally. And she gave me a number of things I could I could buy, you know. So I say this. I mean, Patricia kept joking about aging, which is our destiny. I mean, we all go there. Some of us earlier than others. But I was struck by the future-oriented nature of what she was sharing with us. So I want to thank you very much, Patricia, for all of this. Now, it seems to me that the theme, Tassiana and the festival, have asked us to grapple with tonight. I think it holds in a few words, which I also draw from what Patricia shared with us. What are those few words? I think, at least for me, they have to do overall with the question of the future. The future of what? The future or the futures of the human, the futures of life, and the futures of the earth. And Patricia told us that as we are trying to fast forward, it is important to know where we come from and where we are. So I thought the best way to contribute to this discussion would consist in sharing a kind of small testimony of what I witnessed when growing up in Cameroon. What I saw people doing in their own attempt then to listen to the planet. My father had a farm 60 kilometers. I was born in Cameroon, and he had a farm 60 kilometers from the capital city. So he was a civil servant. So he would work in the capital city from Monday to usually Friday. And on Friday afternoon, he would go to his farm, which was 60 kilometers from the capital city. And I spent a lot of time with him on the farm. I used to go there for the big holidays, the summer holidays, if summer means anything under the tropics. So I spent a lot of time there, and I would just like to share with you what I saw as a young person growing up in that community, which makes me believe that we do have in our heritage and our archives enough to teach us about how to listen to the planet. Maybe not exactly in the same way Patricia shared it with us, but in ways not so dissimilar. I'm now convinced. So The first thing I saw in that community was that, contrary to the one of the cornerstones of Western philosophical thought, elderly people in this community did not believe that the human was exceptional or unique. They just didn't believe in that. And as I have just said, this is a key dimension of Western philosophical thought. Western philosophy believes that we, the humans, are at the top, at the apex of the hierarchy of creation. And the rest of the creation is at our service. And we can dispose of it exactly in the way we want. In this community where I grew up, there's no such belief. Rather, people were convinced that the human was singular and original. They were convinced that each living being came into being through its relations with its environment and its relations with the creatures with whom it shared that environment, which is exactly what Patricia was telling us very vividly a moment ago. In other words, they thought that being with others preceded being in and of itself. So if you want me to put it in big language, they believe that relations preceded ontology. And here again, Western philosophical thought is based on ontology. They privilege ontology over relations. What I saw in this community was the reverse. They privileged relations with ourselves, with the ancestors, with so-called nature, with plants, animals. These relations were the basis on which, the foundations on the basis of which everything else was, if you want, deductible. Rights, obligations, responsibilities, duties, all were attached to the quality of the relations one had with the cosmos comprising, of course, everything else. Another thing I learned as a young person living in that community was the extent to which the community placed the emphasis it placed on the diverse ways of becoming a human person. I insist on this idea of becoming a human person because they did believe that to be human was not at all like we tend to believe today. It was not a matter of so-called identity. It was not at all a matter of identity. It was a matter of becoming, a matter of strenuous and constant labor. That we become human, it's work. You have to do work to become a human person. You are not just a human person because you are born in a family, you have a father, mother, all of that. No, there's constant labor that has to be done for you to become a human person. And of course, they also believed that there were gradations of personhood, and various skills and capabilities were required to sustain what was called full personhood. So full personhood was the equivalent, of course, of achieving a high quality of humaneness, which predisposed then one to become an ancestor once one passed away. So there were a number of key philosophical beliefs like that, which were not at all theoretical, which were embodied, which were situated, which people were striving to experience on a daily basis, learning, of course, to relate to vital forces, flows of energy they believed were present and were active in one's community and one's environment. The other thing which was striking for me as a young person living in this community was the extent to which there was this belief that there were different forms of reality. There was, we should call it surface reality, which was apparent. You see something, but in fact, behind every form of appearance, there was always a deeper level of the reality. There was the real which appeared at the surface of things. It could be seen, it could be sensed by ordinary people, but underneath the surface, there was a deeper level of the real. And this deeper level of the real could manifest itself, of course, in many different ways, yet such manifestations could only be properly deciphered or interpreted by those who had undergone a process of initiation, which then allowed them to become specialists of science. That there were things, in order to see them, to sense them, we need to undergo a deep process of learning. And unless we undergo this process of learning, we cannot see them. We have to teach our vision. We have to teach our sense of hearing. We have to mobilize all the human senses, how to touch, how to feel, how to smell, in order to communicate with the complexity of the living and all the other living beings and things with which we share the earth. This was absolutely key in the ways in which people indeed lived their life. I mention all of this because what has happened during, I would say, the last 2 to 3 centuries of our entry into the so-called modern world, what has happened since colonialism and everything else that has come with it, is that we have been taught to somewhat dismiss this deep history of our entanglement with multiple other species. What we have learned at school, we have learned via the so-called modern institutions, has been about how to separate ourselves from all of that, how to create, mark our own difference with everything that is with us, as a step certainly to classify, to hierarchize and to exploit. And that's how I think we have ended up convincing ourselves that we can separate ourselves from the earth we inhabit. And that in fact, the earth we inhabit is just one resource among many others we can exploit at will, which has led, as Patricia was rightfully arguing, to the damaging of our planet, to the point where the key issue today is whether this planet will still be able to sustain life itself, and the conditions of sustainability of life, whether it still be habitable in the long term. And according to all of the studies we have right now, everything points in the direction of and sustainability of the kind of trajectory we have been following over the last few centuries. So the question is, how do we get out of that impasse? I think to break free from this impasse, we definitely need to put to rest a number of, let's just call them mythological structures, which have led to the current impasse. I think the first or the most important of these mythological structures is the belief that technological development is exponentially inexorable, or that it is akin to biological evolution. The belief that technology is the same thing as biology. It is a very fundamental myth which did not prevail throughout the whole of our history. It has become dominant, I would argue, from the 18th century onwards. And it explains the kind of technological escalation which we are seeing today, which is completely unheard of in the history of humanity. So we have to break with that mythological structure according to which technology is the same thing as biology. The second thing we have to break with is this myth according to which there is a separation between nature and culture. A lot of what we are seeing today precisely is the result of this belief that nature is one thing, culture is another, and between the two, there is no connection whatsoever. I think that we have to come back to the basic observation according to which humanity is objectively earthbound. That the earth is the home we inhabit. This is the place which has given us hospitality. And the kind of unconditional hospitality maybe even in our own human history, we haven't been able to imagine. We have organized our lives within this zone, which we are not the only ones to occupy. Since, as Patricia was showing us, we share it with not only other people, other groups of plants, of trees, of animals. We share it with a wide cast of other life forms. She mentioned fungi. We could add bacteria, we could add viruses, all of which create the conditions we live in. We wouldn't be able to live without them creating indeed those conditions. So this narrow zone, because that's what it is really, the surface we inhabit, is in fact a thin and porous layer. In fact, it's just a few kilometers thick. This zone where life has modified, if you want, the cycles of matter in its heterogeneity. This zone where, let's say, it has created a kind of skin, the earth skin. The earth has a skin just like we humans. And in its body, there is a skin of the earth. And part of what characterizes this skin is that it is where all the forces and all the potentials of the universe, that is where they meet. And that's where they mingle. And it is where, through the reciprocal action of all elements, a generalized horizon is composed and generated, the horizon of life. So we have to come back to that horizon of life. If we are to learn how to listen to the planet and hear it somewhat differently. And I believe that the ongoing climate disorder which we are experiencing is somewhat forcing us to zoom in a bit more on this. Patricia was calling it feminist ecology. I would add terrestrial ecology. The terrestrial ecology of our existence, to take it more seriously than in the past, to take seriously this matter of common concern, the matter of our tenure on Earth. And I use the term tenure à dessein, as we say in French, because we are given the Earth, we are hosted in the Earth for a very limited time. And our destiny, in fact, is to move on. So the matter of concern I'm raising, the matter of our tenure on Earth, has to do with the type of responsibility we take in relation to the Earth while we inhabit it. So let me, I won't go on and on, let me just add a few things before I stop. I think that the argument I want to make is pretty straightforward. I think that what the African archive does offer, if we take seriously our ways of thinking, our cosmogonies, our myths and rituals, all that we have received from our ancestors, it provides us with a pathway to inhabiting the Earth and listening to the planet in a way that is very different from all that has led to the current impasse. I think it teaches us three things, and I will end with them. First of all, it teaches us that within the many lineages of life and of survival, all living entities are composed of symbiotic relationships. I think that is something that is absolutely fundamental if we are to learn to listen to the planet differently. And Africa offers this to us. The second thing the African Archive offers us is that we must understand ourselves as a single life form among and including many others. That is what we call, somewhat in a lofty language, Ubuntu, but that's what Ubuntu precisely means. The entanglement of all forms of life and the fact that all these forms of life participate to the same dynamic without which none of us would be alive. Finally, what Africa teaches us is that we cannot exist independently from these other life forms with which we are also in existential dependency. So I believe that indeed it is possible to listen to the planet differently, but in order to do so, in order to expand the horizons of life, we have to rely on more than one archive. And in any case, we have to reopen African archives because, in fact, if there is a limit to current ecological thinking, is the fact that it has not really taken very seriously what has come out of this continent. So thank you very much for your attention. And once again, I'm very happy to be here.
Muitos aspectos comuns, não é? Entre as duas intervenções, talvez aquilo que a gente possa tirar, e vou falar pouco, se eu falar muito, calem-me, não é? É que mais do que nunca é preciso escutarmos a Terra, sabermos que não somos seres únicos, há muitos outros seres. Não podemos continuar a explorar a Terra como nos últimos 500 anos tem acontecido. Explorar de qualquer maneira, explorar a qualquer custo o que nos tem levado para a situação em que nos encontramos hoje e como foi referido também na introdução, não é? Nós quase que chegamos a um ponto de não retorno de tanta destruição que causamos. Quem não se lembra, talvez nós outras mais velhinhas e mais velhinhos, não é? Que vivíamos muito, tínhamos uma articulação muito grande com a terra. Como dizia a Patrícia, andávamos por ali, apareciam as cobras, mas a gente convivia com elas mais ou menos, não é? Porque algumas, não, se a gente pisasse o seu espaço, porque cada ser tem o seu espaço e na maior parte dos casos somos nós que pisamos o espaço dos outros seres, não é? Nós estamos a fazer isso até agora. Mas a gente se lembra de como é que era esse convívio e como muitos desses aspectos desapareceram. Como ficámos agarrados a tantas outras coisas. À tecnologia. Não é? Até eu estou a olhar aí para o telefone por causa das horas, não é? E tantas outras coisas que a gente se liga, facilitam às vezes a vida, outras vezes complicam. Então, Isabel, cala-te. E nós temos aqui assim, creio que uma hora, quase uma hora, não é, Tassiana e João? Quase. É até às 18? É isso? Ok. Então, por favor, nós temos aqui duas pessoas importantes neste tema. Aproveitemos o facto de que eles estão aqui, ele e ela, e vamos dialogar, ok? Muito obrigada. Dou-vos a palavra agora. Façam um favor, eu não sei se vejo quem quer falar, eu tenho que ir para outro lado porque estas luzes não me deixam ver nada. I was saying that I don't see who wants to intervene because I don't see. Mas ok, façam um favor. Por favor. Por favor, avancem, avancem, avancem.
A tecnologia ajuda, né? É um imenso privilégio poder me dirigir a este painel. A professora Isabela, a professora, colega na Universidade Eduardo Mondlane, a senhora McFadden, muito prazer. Professora Achille, é um imenso privilégio dirigir-me a si, por quem tenho imensa admiração e temos acompanhado os seus textos, tanto quanto possível, absolutamente fantástico. Ora, a minha pergunta é esta, antes que a professora Isabel me corte, é o seguinte. A nossa interpretação e percepção do mundo como africanos foi extremamente condicionada pelas lentes do Ocidente. O professor escreve e fala muito sobre isso, em resultado do colonialismo como fenômeno, não é? A prova disso também é o fato de estarmos em África numa sessão a falar sobre isto em língua europeia, mas talvez não seja tão mal, globalização, enfim. Professor, os nossos referenciais epistemológicos como africanos são atualmente também uma construção essencialmente ocidental, é o que aprendemos nas escolas. A minha pergunta diretamente seria esta. Será que nos dias de hoje, de forma muito honesta, com uma globalização gulosa, seria possível ouvir o planeta com lentes genuinamente africanas? Obrigado. O meu nome é Ivan. Obrigado.
Obrigada, por favor. Como eu não gostei, não é? Por favor, quem quer falar, levanta e depois dá um microfone.
Boa tarde, o meu nome é Tassiana, eu não sou académica, sou jurista e tive também o prazer de tratar estas matérias ao longo da minha carreira e tenho duas perguntas, uma para a Patrícia e para o professor Achille, e agradecer, realmente é um enorme privilégio ter-vos aqui no nosso país e por isso estou profundamente grata. E uma das perguntas para a Patrícia falou bringing the feminist future into the present. E gostava de lhe pedir um conselho de como é que nós podemos começar a fazer isto. Depois, o professor Achille falou no facto de que nós temos que reabrir outros arquivos de conhecimento para fazer frente à situação que vivemos, mas também falou que, e se entendi bem, veja se entendi bem, que os nossos arquivos, os arquivos africanos, nunca foram tomados a sério. E eu queria lhe perguntar em que aspectos é que os nossos arquivos, ou alguns exemplos relativamente aos quais os nossos arquivos africanos não foram tomados a sério. Obrigada.
During the first round. Okay, perhaps we can have 4. And do you agree with 4 questions or comments? Okay.
Will you take more or will you answer now? Okay. So maybe I'll do mine in English, just so that and make sure that I get it right. Thank you very much for your interventions, Ricardo Pereira. So I have two questions. First, for Professor Achille, you've mentioned tenure, and I would like, as an environmentalist, I would like to understand if what the conference is about, right? This Anthropocene and this idea of tenure, if we have not, should we not take that by the letter to say that we are here really for only a very limited time? And if we look at from the beginning until it goes, we will leave and the planet will continue. So have we not externalized the problem when we say the climate is running out of time or the earth is running out of time? Is it not just us? And is it just not easier if we accept that our tenure will come to an end and others will come? And then my question to Patricia, thank you very much, would be, you and what you have spoken to meant that you had to confirm or conform to a very long time. And I love your explanation of the salad bar, where you, and that rage that you felt when you were pointed to the salad bar. And it only when you became, and apologies if this sounds wrong, but only when you became an extremist, and now you carry your own food and you produce your own food. So my question to you is, in a world where we see things are going to the extreme, and we have made, excuse the pun, if we've been sitting on the fence for a very long time, is the only way forward to go extreme, or are we still able to sit on the fence and decide where we go? Thank you.
Mais uma, por favor. The mic. Where is the mic? No problem. Okay, falo alto. Tá aqui? Oh, sorry. Mais uma questão, por favor, e depois temos nossos oradores, tá bem? Mais uma, por favor, ok? Por favor.
Bom, boa tarde a todos e todas. Não vai ser uma questão, e acho que é mesmo uma colocação para pensarmos juntos. Esta vivência ecofeminista se dá no corpo, e é fundamental que pensamos que o corpo como escala. O corpo num lugar que vai depender de outros corpos para haver uma relação. A ideia de se guardar, se esconder para resistir, ela mina a possibilidade de ensinar esta vivência que se dá nesta escala de corpo. Depois de todo esse aprendizado que a Patrícia mostrou, fantástica, quais são as outras escalas que podem nos permitir passar estes saberes para outras pessoas? Obrigado. Não é uma pergunta, é para nós pensarmos.
Ok.
Não é para responder, é para pensarmos. Obrigado.
Ok, muito obrigada. Nós agora vamos passar à oradora e ao orador. Tá bem, por favor?
Okay, I'm going to try and remember all the questions, but I think I'll leave the question of listening to the earth from Africa to my colleague, because, and also, of course, there were questions specifically to him. So let me answer the last one, and then I will answer the question about bringing the feminist future to the present. I think those are the two that really, and of course the issue of it becoming extreme. Yeah. Now let me start with the last question. The whole issue of how we then move forward in terms of I'm trying to understand your commentary as maybe a subtext to an acknowledgement that neoliberalism and the current status quo has forced radicals like myself to, and of course the failure of neocolonialism, have forced radicals to retreat. This is a general question that is being discussed, worldwide among radical people who come from the radical traditions of Marxism and left politics. And it's, of course, a very fundamental question about how we respond to the hegemony of the status quo. And for me personally, retreat, as I said in my presentation, retreat is really an acknowledgement on one hand that the conditions within which I have been doing the work that I love and that I believe I was destined to do when I came here, that work has become untenable for me in the current conditions. And when I look around me at the world where there are communities of people who share my common dreams, I don't see the possibilities of moving forward immediately. I'm going to take this one. I don't see the possibilities of moving forward right now, given that we are under a siege. We have lost a lot of ground, not because we didn't try. I don't believe that radicals didn't try. No, too many of us died for the principles. Okay, thank you. Too many of us died, thank you, my sister, died for the principles that we still, those of us who are still alive, believe in. So it's not a retreat because we are giving up on the project of building an alternative future. But it's really a moment of repose, a moment of reflection, and all struggles require that. All journeys require that you stop and spend the night somewhere and recover your energy. And then you pick up your journey the next day, right? And so being a struggler, being a fighter also requires that you have a sensibility of when the moments arise, when you can actually lean back. In fact, in a lot of my work now, I use notions like that, the notion of leaning back, excuse me, and of reflecting about whom I have become and who those whom I love and work with and respect are becoming. This idea of becoming is so central also to reflection, so that's very important for me. That's my response to the question that radicals and left-leaning, left-thinking people are discussing right now. Is how do we ensure that we are alive tomorrow? We're not burnt out by the hegemony of the neoliberal status quo. And we know that it's very, very pervasive and very, very present in our lives. And we can see it also in the environment. The environment, excuse me. So, but the second thing is that I think that it also, like I think it's a Chinese proverb that says, in every crisis there are opportunities. Look for the opportunities. But you can't find the opportunities or see them until you lean back from the crisis. So I don't think that
that we are shirking the responsibility of our beliefs because we love them. We are dedicated to them. Many of us have given our lives for them. But it's a moment of reflection to find the new ways of doing the work. And you have to do this in any journey, in any struggle. You have to stop and take a deep breath and find the new ways of doing the work. One of the little ways that I'm doing, given the context which is very constrained that I live in personally, but that doesn't apply to everybody. All of us, we live in very specific conditions. The important lesson that I take and I share is look at the conditions within which you are living, within which you are struggling, and then you ask a new set of questions. And look for the new activism, for example. Find new ways, be creative, bring your creative activity to your politics. And I'm finding that this is really enabling me, it's assisting me to respond to the situation. So to come, I hope I can't go on them because otherwise I'm going to take up all the time and then it's unfair. It's anti-feminist. The second question from a sister there was, what does it mean to bring the future, the feminist future to the present? Like I said, I'm working on an idea that I'm calling contemporarity. And this is an idea of knowing and reading the past with new eyes, with new sensibilities and new ways of understanding whom we have become along our journey as radical women. And I always say radical because feminism is a radical ideology. It's a radical lifestyle. It's not just something that you can attach to your name. It's actually a lived politics. And we create it every day as we struggle, as we insist on our full humanity. And as we anticipate that tomorrow will be different because we're going to make it different. That's the distinctive feature of feminism. So when we bring it in from the future into the present, what we are doing is we are reconceptualizing it because every ideology and every legacy of political thought and knowledge has to be continuously engaged with and reconfigured. And contemporarity is an attempt, an invitation to reconfigure what our feminism means. And for me, embracing ecofeminism is a new step for me. I was ecologically aware for a long time. For example, I became vegan. It wasn't out of a vacuum. It wasn't because I just felt like, oh, I don't want to eat meat anymore. No, it was because of my political consciousness was developing and it was reflecting the kinds of struggles and conditions within which I live. So, but thank you for your question. And I hope that I'll be able to articulate some of these ideas more fully as I write more often. And, I try to share my work in unconventional ways, but still it's not as effective as it could be. And then the issue of being extreme. Well, that's your construction of what Patricia is doing and how I am creatively navigating those landscapes, those rigid, institutionalized, and landscapes that I would casually describe as, the catering systems and the restaurants and all that. But of course, it's a much bigger issue. Because what does food mean to us now in our lives. I don't think people actually stop and ask the question what food means. They just shove stuff into their mouths because the commercials tell them that it's good, it's nice, it's, you know. So there's a whole new world of work and thinking that has to go into what it means, not just the consequences of GMOs for the planet, yes, because this is where we live, as Achille has so beautifully articulated. But your body, who you are, you know, what does it mean to be human in relation to what you put in your body? So I don't consider myself extreme because I have creatively found ways of navigating my passage in the public. Of course, I could become a hermit and stay in my pub, in my yard, on my little plot there, you know, on the mountain, and eat my organic food and be vegan. But I traverse the landscapes. I go out into the public. I come to places like this. I want to hear what people are saying. I'm stimulated by people who are thinking about life, what it means to be human, what to be humane as well amongst ourselves and with other living beings. So these are my strategies, my tactics of survival in a landscape that's very hostile and that's so institutionalized and corporatized. So I don't consider my navigational strategies as extreme. I'm really, it's a way for me to rebalance myself in my body, protect my body, you know, give myself pleasure, and also continue to resist the corporatization, you know, and the extractivism that capitalism has unleashed on the human body by using us, you know, as a means of extreme forms of capitalist accumulation. So I think those are the three questions that I received. I'm sorry if I've missed somebody's request or question, but you know, we will always have an opportunity because we create the opportunities.
Okay. Muito obrigada, Patrícia.
Okay, thanks, Isabela. I will try to put together the questions that have been addressed to me. And I would like to do that by maybe just reframing the terms of the discussion that is going on all over the world as we speak. In any case, the way I understand it. The way I understand it is that in our short history of human beings on Earth, I say short history because we have been on Earth, the time we have been on Earth is far shorter than the time the Earth itself has been around. And we are at a moment when we begin to realize that the ways in which we have inhabited the Earth, the way in which we have related to it, we have exploited the resources it has offered us. All of that has led to a catastrophic situation. All the studies at our disposal show right now. So the fact of the matter is that the Earth, the only place in the universe where human life is known to be possible, that place is, as we speak, deeply damaged. So the recognition of a damage that has been done, and a damage for which human beings in general, but some parts of the world in particular, are responsible of, that we have acquired over a very short period of time, we, the humans, an enormous capacity to act as geological forces. So that is, let's say, a first aspect of the ongoing debate. The second one has to do with the fact that the earth, having been so damaged, there are a number of conditions that have to be met for its durability and the durability of our own life on it. One of those conditions is to repair it. So the duty to repair what it is that we have damaged or contributed to damaging. There's a price to repair it, and this has to be a just price. For instance, Africa has not contributed to the damaging of the environment the same way as industrialized countries. So we cannot be asked in Africa to pay exactly the same price as those who objectively have committed, let's say, the most damage. So the duty to repair, therefore, all those debates, political, artistic, philosophical, which are going on as we speak on the question of repairing, reparation, etc. And we need to contribute to those planetary debates from the point of view of the continent. The second condition is to share the earth, because the earth, as we speak, is not equitably shared. That's why we still have, all these colonial debates which are premised on some having more than they deserve. And the principle of sufficiency, which Patricia was talking about, which is, I understand, not only as a personal way of navigating one's life in a hostile environment, but also as a collective task, that sufficiency, in fact, we can share the earth if we limit ourselves to that which is sufficient, that we don't take more than we deserve or more than what is necessary for living a dignified life. So repair, sharing as preconditions for the durability of the earth and for the maintenance of life on earth. These are the current debates, which once again are planetary. Now, how do we enter into these discussions? From what kind of epistemological starting point do we enter into these discussions? From the point of view of those hegemonic forms of knowledge which indeed have led us to the current impasse? Or do we need to, as I was saying early on, look beyond those hegemonic forms of knowledge? Where do we go finding them? And here, I have to say that indeed in the contemporary ecological theory, contemporary ecological theory has not taken seriously the knowledge and forms of being, modes of being, which have come especially from Africa. And it's a point we can debate about. But that is a fact. Nor has it integrated in its body. For instance, the experience coming from the Amazon people, the first people, the first inhabitants of the earth. So now one would tell me, okay, look, there's no such thing as an African archive. I beg to disagree. It does exist. They are indigenous forms of knowledge, as they are called, which have been harnessed in disciplines such as history, in disciplines such as anthropology, on a whole set of matters such as how to care for the environment, questions of hunting, relations with animals, agriculture, means soil improvement, relationship with plants and medicine, water management. There are all kinds of knowledges, body of knowledge produced both by Africans and so-called Africanists, which we have to take seriously. And in fact, even what we call colonial knowledge to a large extent is the products of the work of so-called native informants. You take something like the Dogon. The Dogons are a very important ethnic community in Mali who were very powerful in inventing astrological theories, for instance. They had an amazing knowledge of the movement of the earth, of the moon, of the stars and all of that. And a lot of this knowledge was expressed in myths, really important ones. So a French anthropologist called Marcel Griol went to the Dogon country during colonialism, and he recorded one such important myth. But in fact, he was not the inventor of that myth. It was told to him by a local specialist called Ogotemeli. Okay, so you have a thing where, in fact, Ogotemeli should have been the author of the book. But Griol became the author and appropriated the knowledge of Ogotemeli. And in our hurry to, let's say, dismiss African indigenous forms of knowledge, we say, okay, since the book is signed by Griol, it's colonial and is not ours. But it is ours. It is Ogotemeli's knowledge. So we have to reopen that discussion on what constitutes colonial knowledge. How was it invented? How was it produced? What is the part of ours in the production of a whole body of knowledges we try either to dismiss or so, but that's a very long discussion. I just want to put it on the table to say that, yes, if we want to renew ecological debates, the debate on the ecology, on the future of the planet, the future of the earth today, we cannot only rely on those hegemonic forms of knowledge which have led us to the current impasse. We have to open the archives of the whole world. Now, as far as the question of our tenure on Earth is concerned, I called it our tenure on Earth, in the sense that, in fact, if we take seriously the idea of the Earth with capital E, the Earth is a metaphor of so many powerful political potential ideas. For instance, the idea that it doesn't belong to anyone in particular. I don't know of anybody who is the owner of the earth. If you know anybody, I mean, I would be happy to hear about it. But it contradicts, and Patricia was gesturing towards this, the question of the principle of the market, that everything can be bought and sold. In fact, except the earth with capital E, you cannot sell it. And there's no buyer in particular. You can sell small portions, fractions, all of that. You cannot sell the earth as an ensemble, as a unit. So it contradicts questions of private appropriation, fundamentally. Second, none of us needs a visa to be born and to be hosted on earth. Which means that, metaphorically, it embodies the idea of radical hospitality. It is the only such existing entity in the universe which is open to all, without distinction, no discrimination whatsoever. So we are all inhabitants, humans, non-humans, etc. In a world which, and I make a distinction between the earth and the world, in a world of nation states in particular, Patricia talked about nationalism. One of the bases of nationalism is, of course, the idea that some belong, others don't belong. The concept of the citizen. You have citizens and you have foreigners. The earth doesn't know of such categories. So in fact, if we are to think in a planetary manner today, there are a number of concepts, categories, which are provided to us by the earth, which can become the cornerstone of a true, authentic planetary politics. A planetary politics which is not the exact equivalent of the UN or of cosmopolitanism per se, but something even more radical along the lines I think Patricia was pushing a moment ago. So this evening we were talking about all of this, but these are questions which are absolutely critical for our future, the future of the continent, of Mozambique, of course, but also the future of the world at large. At a time when the world is fractured, the return of wars of extermination, as we see going on, which we are encouraged not to name, although we know what's going on. We see it with our own eyes, and many are trying to convince us of the fact that what we see is something else. So it seems to me, let's say something like this festival here in Mozambique helps us to engage with these very complex issues and together come up with, if not proposals for the post-Anthropocene, at least ideas we can then go back and work with.
Thank you very much, Patricia and Achille. We have... Desculpem, demos duas questões do chat virtual. Quem é que as vai ler, por favor?
Aqui. São em francês, então vou falar em francês como temos tradução. Zainabou Adari, du Niger, demande au professeur Mbembe, mais je pense que vous avez commencé à y répondre. Pouvez-vous... Non? Si, tá. Tem tradução simultânea. Donc la première question est par le professeur. Pouvez-vous caractériser les archives africaines, leur structure, leur identité, quel est leur périmètre? J'imagine qu'elle constitue un matériau unique pour réinventer l'histoire africaine. Et la deuxième s'adresse à Patricia. Peut-on considérer le féminisme écologique comme un féminisme de résistance, une démarcation de plus en termes d'intersectionnalité, une voie salutaire et radicale pour le féminisme noir, pour réinventer le monde? Merci. I can translate if you'd rather.
E a segunda, as duas já saíram? Ok, em francês, às vezes a gente não entende, ok? Francês ficou na... Né? Achille? You follow the...
Yes, I did.
Okay, please, it was in one of your first language.
Okay. Okay, when I use the term archive, I mean, what I have in mind is a bit more than the classical understanding of the archive. You have a building, and then you have the documents, which, when analyzed, can tell us about a past. I use the term archive in the sense of a wealth of knowledges, which in the African context were written. I mean, we do inherit a written tradition, especially in the Muslim part of the continent. If you go to a city like Timbuktu in Mali, Timbuktu is a city where almost in every household you have a library with texts and books which date from the 14th century at least. So we do have a written tradition. But a lot of the knowledge that was produced by African societies was also conserved in objects. This is called them art objects, so-called art objects. So for instance, if you go today to Paris and you go to the Musée du Quai Branly, you have there something like 120,000 African objects, most of which were either pillaged or stolen, in any case, taken somewhat forcibly from the communities which fabricated them, where they performed all kinds of functions, and they are now in a museum. I use objects precisely as part of the archive because, in fact, objects were repositories of knowledge. People who made objects had to know, for instance, what trees you want to sculpt a mask. You have to know what are those trees that are more amenable to a mask, making a mask, than others. You had to be able to have a whole set of chemical, let's say, knowledge in chemistry, because in order to ensure the durability of the object, you needed a whole set of substances to mix it up with. You also needed a whole set of knowledges in terms of the connection between the mask and the world of the invisible, the ancestors, the cosmos, etc. So when you see an object is in and of itself a piece of archive, a repository of knowledge. Other forms of knowledge were embodied. You see, for instance, Patricia was mentioning the body. What is a body in pre-colonial Africa? A body in itself is, of course, what you see, made up of organs and the rest. It is adorned. Most of them are adorned. You do a study, for instance, of hairstyles. I mean, it doesn't apply to some of us because we are not that well endowed. But those who were really endowed, you look into it, they tell you something in a statement on the individual, the person, and his or her connection with the cosmos. It was also performed. I remember growing up, I told you about where my father had a farm, and I remember all these traditional ceremonies with ritual dances. The drum, the beating of the drum, the ways in which the body commune is in resonance, not only with the immediate environment, but also the telluric forces, the forces of the underworld, of the beyond, all of that very stylized, requiring specialized forms of knowledge, or the knowledge of the forest, of which an author like Chinua Achebe talks about in his. So look, there is an archive. There is a powerful archive. And that archive, we have not harnessed it the way we should. We have not at all. And if we want to contribute to the repairing of the world, the sharing of the world, as preconditions for our own durability and the durability of the planet, we will have to interrogate those reservoirs, just as we will have to interrogate those other reservoirs we find in places like the Amazon and other parts of the world, which because of colonialism have been put at the margin, let's say, of world intelligence. So that's how I would answer, not really answer the question, but let's say provide more material for us to dig a bit deeper in the issue.
Ok, muito obrigada, thank you.
Okay, I'm not really sure what the question was because it interpolated Black feminism into a question that seemed to ask me whether I'm suggesting that feminism is a way to reinvent or reimagine the world. So what I'm going to try to do is to respond to both parts. I hope my understanding is at least adequate enough for me to respond, to make some response. What is called Black feminism, in my understanding, is really an expression of women's struggles, women who live in Black bodies, who struggle within a particular context, which is the context of North America and the Caribbean, where hundreds of millions of Africans were dragged across the oceans, brutalized in the most egregious ways, and in an attempt to dehumanize us. And we have to actually come to face with this. We were talking about slaving earlier on and how it really provides the foundations for the emergence of feudalism and capitalism. I'm using an old but very useful epistemological tool or sort of prism that helps us to try to make sense of the human journey and the chaos that characterizes the human journey as we have come to know it or excavated it and tried to understand it, particularly through the archives, that our resistances leave us these archival resources that are very important explanators, markers of our journey as humans, because we have been differentiated through infrastructures of power. So women who are black, who live in black bodies, who have been marked with the color of blackness, but also who have been put through the experience of being denigrated and treated as non-human. Those women are part of a community of all the women who have existed on the planet, who have fought patriarchy since it was invented by men, since it emerged as a system of privileging men, regardless of their color. And then over time, of course, you have variations on who and how much privilege each group of men enjoy. But the crux of the matter is that men enjoy privilege through patriarchy. It privileges all humans who are defined as males, particularly heterosexual males. So Black feminism is very specifically contextual to the struggles of women who have lived in Black bodies that are violated in very particular ways through slaving, through the slaving experience of the continent in the diaspora, what we call the diaspora. And those discourses, those resonances that connect with the general struggles of women against patriarchy, but also more particularly with the struggles of women who remain embedded on the continent. Those resonances speak to the diversity within feminism, but also they set apart in particular ways the stories, the narratives of resistance within those locations. And I'm really I'm touched by the idea that we are actually thinking about location. When somebody asks, can we speak about an African archive or can we speak about the earth or to the earth from Africa? And it really touched me, that question, because it really tells us how disconnected we are as humans. How can anybody ask such a question? We live here. We are the first humans, at least according to archaeological records. And we live here. We continue to live here, in spite of all the attempts to remove us from this continent. We are resilient and persistent that this is our continent, this is our home, this is where we are going to live for as long as humans live on the planet, you know? And so location is so important in terms of grounding us when we understand the meanings and the significances of struggles. And for feminism, feminism is constituted of all the struggles that women have engaged in their particular ways, wherever we are located as humans who live in female bodies. So it is this that we then pull together. It's a legacy that we bring to the desire to reshape the human experience on the planet, and to insist that, you know, we can have a different future, and we will bring that future into the present as long as we are here and we are living and creating the present. Because by our very existence, we are the present, and we recreate that present all the time. That is the power of feminism. Now, I'm still waiting for the people who are privileged by patriarchy, not the colluders. A lot of women collude. I'm talking about the actual beneficiaries of patriarchy, the ones who make sure that the system doesn't change. They have all kinds of excuses and reasons for resisting. It's called a backlash. And because what privilege does to humans, it warps their consciousness. It warms their ability to relate to other humans in humane ways. And feminism offers the opportunity for those who are privileged by patriarchy, either through race, through ableism, through heteronormativity, through gendered identities, heteronormative identities. All these people, they are beneficiaries of patriarchal privilege. And I'm waiting for you to give up your privilege, because we are having to pull this load, you know, and we shouldn't have to, you know. So everybody has to take responsibility for the privilege that they enjoy and participate in the creation of an alternative future. And I'm not even talking about the crisis, the ecological crisis here. I'm just talking about becoming humans, as Achille reminded us. And just as a final word of, I want to say that, you know, one of the things that I've learned, and it resonates with what Achille said about how he heard and learned in the village about how people become humans, that you're not born human, you become human. This is one of the things I've learned. When I'm disappointed by somebody whom I've helped, because I do have more resources than most people around me, but I always feel like I've been slapped in the face. Yeah. We usually feel like I've been slapped when the person turns around and bites me, you know, and you know, everybody knows that experience. And you feel resentful and angry, and you know, you go to a place where you think the person is ungrateful and all that. I've learned and taught myself now that no. When I assist somebody, when I share anything, and the person is feeling humiliated and shamed by that, I have to remember that I was humanizing myself. I wasn't trying to control the person. I wasn't trying to own that person or tell them who they should be. I was giving myself humanity. I was becoming a human being. And that's it's a very important lesson that I've learned, you know, and that I really felt a deep resonance with what Achille said, you know, and that's a part of the archive of being African here. Okay.
Muito, muito obrigada. Esta tarefa de moderar, sabem, é muito difícil, porque a gente não pode cortar, assim como cortamos um pedaço qualquer, não é? Não se pode cortar o pensamento. Mas pronto, temos que cortar. Estarão cá até amanhã. Então, todas as outras conversas que não foram possíveis, poderemos fazer depois. E mesmo ainda hoje, não é? Muito obrigada, muito obrigada. Merci.
I enjoyed this. Thank you so much. So glad you are all there.